and it's useful. All right, so recording now. Did anyone read the assigned reading? The little couple of pages about Blue Creek cabins. Anybody? I see a hand half up, but I think you're just stretching. You're just stretching. Yeah. Anybody? All right. So as punishment, you have to listen to another meandering anecdote from my life. So ha. All right. That'll teach you. Okay. So 20 years ago, I was still a finance major here. I was graduating, and I finished up my. I had a 10-year break, so I did 2 years at Champaign-Urbana. Kind of hated it. Dropped out, joined the Navy, did 6 years there, did some other stuff, worked a little bit afterwards. After about 10 years being out, I was like, oh, okay, I got to do something with my life. So I went back to school, finished up my finance degree, and then eventually went into grad school. Now the thing about being an older student, when you're like 20, the basics of anything are hard to do, right? It's hard to get up in the morning and go to class and pay attention. And even if you're in class half paying attention, you're probably daydreaming about hooking up with Susie or Chad or Susie and Chad, whatever, But you're 30 and you're back in school. You're used to getting up, right? And doing things you kind of don't want to do. And you look around the classroom and like once in a while you might be interested in somebody, but mostly you're like, wow, these are kids. It'd be kind of sketchy for me to even date anybody from this class. So whatever, right? And you have friends in a social circle already on the outside. And UIC is honestly not the best place to make friends anyway. So it's a lot easier to be a focus student. Yes, how may I help you? Which part? Because people don't live together. A lot of times people don't spend time on campus afterward. Yeah. So it's a commuter school. I'm not saying it's impossible to make friends. I made a couple friends, but it's harder than at most schools, right? Whatever. Anyway, that's the prevailing wisdom. As always, your mileage may vary. But the point is, I got, it was kind of easy at like 30 or so coming back to school and doing all this stuff. And all right, so I was a finance major, and so I took Finance 310 with a professor named Bob Bills. Now, Bob Bills, I'm not going to say much about him, except he was an interesting character, and we got along well. If you ask any of the people in the finance department who have been here a very long time and mention his name, they may be like, oh yeah, that guy. Who knows? They may have some good stories, but I don't. All I know is he and I lived in about the same neighborhood. I lived in Lincoln Park. He lived somewhere close by. And because I was older and we kind of bump into each other at bookstores in the neighborhood once in a while, we would talk a bit more than the average, student and professor would. So after I graduated, I'm in grad school here. I'm teaching I'm a TA for the precursor to this course, IDS 100, where students, in the labs, they learn Microsoft Word and PowerPoint and some Excel. So it was similar, but, more basic. And, I get frustrated because, there's occasionally some assigned reading and I find that the students are never reading it. And I mentioned this to Professor Bills as, we bump into each other when I'm like a year or two into grad school. And he says to me, Doug, in all the years I taught here, I only ever had one student who did the reading and showed up every day for class and was interested in what's going on. And I was like, well, that's kind of sad because you were here for a while. And they were kind of big courses. And he's like, yeah, well, the student was you. And I said, okay, that's nice, but still kind of sad. So all I'm saying is, expectations are low, but it would have been nice if somebody read it. All right. So I'm going to go through it anyway. I'm not going to read it. Well, I am going to go to Blackboard, and you can see what you missed out on. So it's here in lectures. And if you go into the Google module and you see there Blue Creek Cabins, it is a long document. It is multiple pages, 2 pages. Brutal. All right. Well, I don't blame you for not reading it. I mean, who's got time for that? So we'll cover it in paint. So first thing, all right, so Blue Creek Cabins, dude's got a cabin rental service in rural Georgia, right? Georgia, the state in the southeast, not, the country of, the former Soviet Union. So dude starts, guy launches with AdWords around 2001, okay? So AdWords is pretty new. he starts this business. He's got to get the word out about, you can come to Blue Creek Cabins and, rent some cabin space, do hunting, fishing, maybe boating. I don't know. Whatever you're going to do there, you can do it. He's doing ads. Now, the case at 2001, number one, most keywords are available, right? The bids on them are pretty low, and not much competition. Okay, there aren't a lot of people bidding on the same terms, right? So you can imagine if you're doing a cabin rental service in rural Georgia, right, there's not a lot of competition for getting on the internet in 2001. So basically what this means is AdWords is highly profitable, okay, and doesn't require much effort, because any reasonable set of terms you can bid on, either number one, it's not going to get any clicks at all because the terms are so weird and rare that they don't show up, or if it does get clicks, there's a pretty good chance that you're paying maybe a quarter a click, and it's easy to sustain that, based on if somebody has like a 5 or 10% chance of actually making a reservation at your cabins, you're making your money back and then quite a bit more. Okay, so you don't have to work that hard with it, and we'll box this up. Okay, so that's the initial state. Fast forward 10 years. Okay, so fast forward plus 10 years. And suddenly, lots of competition. Many keywords are expensive. Oh, am I not sharing the screen? Thank you if that's what the case is. Plunk, plunk, yeah, okay, cool, thank you. I will do that. Okay, I hope that's what it was. Yeah, cool. Oh yeah, there's Mark, okay. All right, so let's do this. Where is I was back in Paint. Okay, lots of competitions, many keywords are expensive, right? So the consequence is it's more work to figure out which terms are useful and which aren't, right? And costs more in any event. And I'm going to add one last thing. Also, established business now. Okay, so 2001, his business is just starting. You got to find some way to get the word out. Okay, but after he's been around for 10 years, he's got, a set of regular users. So he doesn't need, to advertise that much. He's got a regular circle of people who keep coming back maybe year after year. He's got some word of mouth telling their friends, and so, yeah, he does need to do a little bit of online advertising to fill in those gaps in the schedule, but it's not nearly as, desperate as it was the first couple years. So let's ask, how might you deal with this problem? Deal with the fact that it's harder to use AdWords. So caveat, you're still going to stay in AdWords, but you're going to do it a little differently, and you're not going to just jump over to some other online ad service, because this is kind of true across the board, and Google's still pretty much the best of the bunch. So how might you in practice deal with this? How might you specifically deal with the problem of the rising cost of clicks? What do you want from a click? Business. Well, let's be more specific. You want somebody to reserve something, right? Yeah, you want to make a sale. Good. Okay. So what would you do in terms of figuring out which clicks are worth paying for and which ones aren't? What would you like to be able to do? What's that? You wouldn't be able to vet anybody that's going to click on your ad. You kind of can, though. All right, so I don't expect people to be like web analytics experts, but one of the things you get with Google's system is you can see what search terms brought people to your site and what ads brought people to your site associated with which search terms. So you can see, hey, somebody clicked on an ad after seeing these search terms. This is and you could say maybe one group of search terms followed by a click has a high probability of getting a reservation. Fine, keep those. Keep on bidding on that one. You can see another set of search terms that results in a click. has a very low probability of getting a sale. Maybe you don't bid so much on that one, right? So you can start, you know, basically number one, adjust term choice in regard to actual sales. That's one thing you can do, okay? Now, another thing, suppose, let's pop out of this for a moment, and we can assume, yeah, we're still using AdWords, but what's the how do you get people to your site without using AdWords? Right? How would you do it in a world where online ads didn't exist? Yeah. Billboards. Well, no, still online, right? Because I mean, yeah, you could do billboards, but do all that in parallel. Various sorts of offline marketing, you could do that. But how would people get to your site without, if you didn't run any ads? Yeah. Yeah. So they would, well, back it up a second, we'll do step by step, but yes. So people would get to your site by running a search where your site showed up in the search results, right? Presumably where your site showed up pretty high in the search results. So what you want to do along those lines, again, figure out which search terms are leading to actual sales, and then you can arrange your site, do some search engine optimization, SEO, in regard to successful terms. So for example, suppose you're a cabin rental business, suppose a very successful search that comes in is fishing in, say, some county in Georgia, right? I don't know the counties of Georgia, but if I did, you could do that. And maybe that's a really good one for your site, where a lot of people say they're searching for good places to go fishing. They find your cabins, they're like, great, yeah, weekend away fishing, all weekend. And so you could put some stuff on your landing page, right? You could say, not included in the page title, you could say, try hunting and fishing at, Blue Cabin Rental Service in rural Georgia, right? And then have sections of the page with headers, right? One section for cabin rental, one section for hunting, one section for fishing, whatever. So that it becomes clear to Google that that's what your page is all about. You might even do better having separate pages, right? Because then Google can really say, oh, this page isn't just a mix of cabin rental, hunting, and fishing. This page is all about fishing. And so if somebody's doing that search, fishing rural Georgia, boom, that page is a great match for it, automatically ranks high. And why is search engine optimization, if you can do it well, why is that preferable to running ads with AdWords? Four-letter word, starts with F, ends with re. Free. Search engine optimization, once you paid for the cost of redesigning the website, it's free. If your website shows up in ordinary search results and people click on it, that doesn't cost you anything, right? Plus, it has cascading consequences to your ad's quality score, right? So doing better with search terms automatically improves your ad's QS, quality scores. Okay? Because why? Part of the thing about the quality score is essentially how good a match the ad is for the terms, but also how good of a site it is, how often clicks on the ads lead to transactions. If Google sees that your numbers are pretty good for all of those, your quality score is better, you get more results for the money you're spending on ads, right? And if your search engine optimization is good, you're also doing better with your free traffic. Okay, so essentially, and the last thing I'll add, regular review of term success, right? In 2001, there's not a lot of competition. You don't have to pay a lot of attention to the terms that you're bidding on and how much you're bidding. 2011, AdWords is pretty busy. Yeah, you got to check that stuff pretty regularly. If you have search terms with ad clicks that are not being very useful, right? They're not leading to sales. You want to bid less on those, and you got to keep an eye on that, or pretty soon you're going to be losing a lot of money. Okay, it's easy to overspend. Okay, so anyway, I would politely encourage everyone, I'm not going to monitor you and see that you do, but I would politely encourage everyone to read the article. It's not that long, and it'll help make some of the stuff we've been talking about a little more concrete, I hope. But I'm also well aware that probably most of you aren't going to read the article, is what it is. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about any of that? Would anyone like to know more? All right. Might be all I have to do with paint for a while. Okay, so we'll go in and make a dent in the rest of the lecture then. So AdSense, as promised, here we are, AdSense. So AdSense is a customizable model for advertising revenue generation. So we're gonna talk with the basics about this. So back in the 90s, when the World Wide Web first starts being a thing, there's a lot of people generating content, but they're having a tough time figuring out how to make money off of it. The problem with online, like if you have a book that you've written, it costs a certain amount of money to make a physical book, right? And it's a fair amount of work to actually make a copy of a book, right? You have to take that book to Kinko's or something, spread it out, flatten it, and your crappy photocopy book isn't going to look as good as the original anyway. So physical media is harder to copy, but once everything goes online, people can just, cut and paste whatever text, they can copy whatever images and send them along. They can download videos and save them. It's hard to make money off of that when it's so very, very, very easily, copied. So people were like, how do we even make money off this? If I have a blog, even if I write something interesting, people are just going to cut and paste it in emails and pass it around the internet that way. So AdSense was kind of a response to that. The idea is if you are a blogger or other content creator, you can designate some portion of your web pages where Google can run ads. And the nice thing about that, you can make money. That's how that works. And Google does the heavy lifting of figuring out what ads go where. So basic idea, site owner agrees to display Google's ads. Google selects and provides ads. When viewers click the ads, the advertisers pay Google, and Google pays the site owner, right, the blogger. And this solved the problem of earning revenue from free content. So we'll talk a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about how shit was in the 90s before we move on. So anybody ever heard of Angel Fire? No? Angel Fire. Angel Fire was a place where you could make really shitty websites in the 90s. Okay, it was one of those free web design templates, and they kind of looked like this because it was like 1997 or something, and graphics were cheesier back then. A lot of machines didn't have 24-bit color graphics, for example, just 256 colors. So yeah, this was a thing. Anyway, on top of these pages, you might have a big banner ad on top, right? And it'd have some kind of flashing thing to get your attention, might flash red and white. And down at the bottom, you'd have this number that showed how many people had visited the page. So what would happen is you'd go to a website and there'd be this big flashing banner ad at the top that would say, congratulations, you're like the 1 millionth person to visit this site today. Click whatever to get your free prizes. But the problem is 1 in every 20 pages you went to had that thing that was telling you were 1 in a million. So you knew it was bullshit, right? And then if you look like down on the bottom of these like sad little blogs, or interest pages, it would be something like 13 people have visited this site since it was created. And you'd be like, yeah, okay, I'm the millionth person, sure. But eventually curiosity gets the better of you and you click on one of those banner ads. I did it myself once, 98, 99, I don't remember. And I clicked on one and it took me down this long rabbit hole of questionnaires. So what it promised me is like something like $500 or a new, Apple laptop, a MacBook or something, or like a stereo system or a PC, whatever, $500 approximate value. And, I figure, oh, okay, we'll see what it is. But I go down this long rabbit hole where they're asking me endless questions about demographics. Have I heard of this product? Have I not heard of that product? Have I tried this product? Have I not? Have I seen commercials for? Anyway, after about 8 or 10 pages of this, I'm like, there probably is no prize at the end. And even if there is, it's probably going to take me like 100 hours of going through this crap to get to it. So forget it, I'm done, right? And at that point, you're never going to click on another banner ad again. And to the best of my knowledge, I never did. And that's the problem with unfocused advertising, right? If you don't have a good idea of who your people are, it's tough to get advertisements that speak to them. So that's what Google is doing with AdSense. It's trying to figure out what the page is about. And based on what the page is about and possibly some metrics about who's going to the page, Google tries to show ads that are of interest to those people, right? So let's go a little forward. All right. So with AdSense, the ad selection process is different from AdWords. First of all, it's based on site content, not site terms, right? In some sense, Google tries to figure out what the page is about. And this is inherently much more imprecise than using search terms. Search terms are great. If somebody tells you, they're looking for Kansas City Chiefs gear, they're looking for Kansas City Chiefs gear, right? And you can put all kinds of like football things all around the pages and have a pretty good idea that, they might click on some of that. But if it's just a page about football that happens to have some stuff, about the Kansas City Chiefs, then it becomes a lot more murky, right? Then it's a lot harder to figure out what the person's there for. So site content, relatively hard to address, and relatively hard to link to ads. Number two, all else equal, users are a lot more likely to visit the wrong site than enter entirely wrong search terms, right? People click on sites that they don't mean, links that they don't mean to all the time. They end up traveling to sites, where they're not really interested in the stuff. But it doesn't have to be perfect. This system with AdSense, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough to make money. And it is good enough to make money. It used to be about 20% of Google's revenues. These days, it's probably been pushed down to about 15%. Ads shown along with search results are still like the big thing, but AdSense isn't a trivial thing either. 15% of Google is way bigger than most companies. Anyway, AdSense is very popular with bloggers, people who are aggregating promotions, right? They say, here's a bunch of links where you can buy things. If you go through us, we'll get, some cut of that. And other informational sites that don't have a product, but they'd like to make money through ads. Okay, so again, if you're a business, you probably want to use AdWords if you're selling something, right? Because then people click on your ad, they go to your site, you buy something. That's how you make money. If you're a blogger or somebody else who doesn't have a product to sell, AdSense makes sense because people come to your site and seeing the AdWords ads is basically like seeing a commercial and you have the potential to get paid for that. Okay. Diagram's pretty similar to the AdWords one. So the advertiser sends ads to Google. Google stores them in some database. Google also has a database full of whatever relevant web page information it has to figure out which ads make sense to show along with which pages. So when somebody visits some third-party web page, right, they go to visit somebody's blog, then if that blog is running AdSense, when the page is getting constructed, they'll be thinking, oh, here's a part on the page that Google needs to fill. So the page is going to send out a query to Google, send out a request, hey, please send me ad content to go on this page. Google will send it back, right, and then place it in the appropriate location. So in this case, the blogger has agreed to let Google run ads at the top and bottom of the page. There it is. And the basic system, Google selects ads to appear on each page. Hopefully viewers click on the ads. And if they do, the advertiser pays Google, and Google pays a cut of that, something like 45, 50% probably, to the site owner, to the blogger. Okay? Makes sense? Questions? Would you like to know more? We're all good? Okay. So, next thing, Google is concerned about whether clicks are valid or not valid. So, we'll start off by talking about the different revenue models, though. So, the basic payment models, advertisers could pay Google either, number one, anytime an ad is seen. That's called pay per impression. And if Google shows the ad to someone, the advertiser has to pay Google. Typically, pay per impression is called PPM, which stands for, pay per, and the M is for 1,000. So for every, like a Roman numeral, Al. So for every 1,000 times that Google shows the ad, they get paid a few bucks. The most common one by far online is pay per click. Google only gets paid if somebody clicks on the ad, but they definitely do get paid if someone clicks on the ad. And the last one is pay per conversion. So conversion in this sense means something that you want to happen on your website. It's a standard web analytics term. Typically for a retail site, the conversion would be somebody makes a purchase. But it could also be something like if you're selling like, window installation services or other repair stuff, a conversion could also be just somebody setting up an appointment to talk with a service provider there. Okay, so those are your three models: pay-per-impression, pay-per-click, pay-per-conversion. Pay-per-click is the most common one. And the reason is, we'll draw another picture. I guess I do need paint. I'm going to draw this as a spectrum. Okay. So this axis down on the bottom is risk. And in some cases, Google has more risk, and in other cases, advertiser has more risk. Okay. Okay. So in the case of, let's see, pay-per-conversion, does the advertiser have any risk at all? Well, they don't have any substantial risk because they know they're only going to pay Google if the conversion actually happens, basically if they make a sale. Now, there is a little bit of risk built in, like maybe the sale is small, maybe it's big, or maybe the conversion is they schedule an appointment but then don't end up buying the service. But there's very little risk in the terms of advertiser for pay per conversion. All right, so I'm going to do that pay per conversion here. Google takes on a lot of risk in that case. Now the other one, pay per impression, the advert takes on a lot of risk. Why? Yeah.
Because 1,000 people could see that, and of those 1,000 people, there's no conversion.
And?
The advertiser gets no money.
Yeah, right. So Google gets paid regardless of how people interact with the ad. Google can just show the ad. Google knows it's going to get paid. There's no risk to Google, right? So whatever risk there is all on the advertiser. Okay? And pay-per-click is in the middle. There's some risk shared by both. So Google has to pick ads with a reasonable probability of getting clicked so that Google gets paid, right? If Google makes terrible choices, nobody clicks on the ad and the advertiser doesn't have to pay Google, although the advertiser doesn't get anything out of it either. On the other hand, with pay-per-click, there is definitely the possibility that viewers click on the ad, go to the website, look around for a while and say, yeah, this isn't for me. Okay, so most businesses choose PPC because it makes the most sense. So suppose you're somebody big like Target and you're running ads for some standard product you sell that, you run a lot of ads and you make a lot of sales on them. If you choose the pay per conversion option, you're probably going to end up having to pay more. Reason is Google's taking on extra risk and they're going to demand to be compensated for that risk. They're going to charge you a higher rate, right? This is kind of like the CAPM model in finance, if you guys have gotten to that. With pay-per-click though, if Target is getting a lot of traffic with ads, you're going to get the about average amount every day. And so pay-per-click, yeah, it's going to be average. So you're not really, in the long run, you're going to get about the same benefit from either of these, but because this one Google formally has to take on more risk, you're going to go with pay-per-click. And pay-per-impression, businesses don't like taking on all the risk, right? They're a little bit risk averse and it makes sense. So where pay-per-impression makes sense is if it's with an ad that there's not really something to sell. For example, if you're a studio that's releasing a big movie in a few months, and you want to show some ads to create a little bit of buzz around that movie, it makes sense to do pay per impression, right? Because nobody's going to say, oh, yeah, that movie's in 3 months. Let me go, buy tickets for it, right? Or if you're McDonald's, for example, you might do some online ads to create greater awareness of McDonald's, but it's pretty unlikely that people are going to see that ad and immediately order some food. So, yeah, that's the kind of stuff. Pay per impression often makes sense when there's no saleable product. Where pay per conversion makes sense, imagine if you're a small business or a business with a very high expensive clicks, right? So for example, life insurance tends to have tremendously high bids per clicks. The reason is when people buy life insurance, when they start looking around at it, number one, they're pretty likely to buy it. And number two, there aren't that many providers, so you got to select from one of them, and it tends to be a long-term contract, right? People keep life insurance for many, many years. So bid prices in hundreds of dollars are not uncommon at all. And because of that, you might say, yeah, you know what, even though, we get so many inquiries, we're going to err on the safe side and go with pay per conversion because it's just a lot of money we're potentially putting on the table if things go wrong. Or if you're a very small business that's just starting out and you say, yeah, we know it's super efficient to do pay per conversion, but if we're spending this money with Google, we want to make sure that at least we got something for it. You might do that, right? But if you're a large business that's doing a lot of sales through ads, yeah, pay per conversion probably isn't what you want to use. Okay, so that's some real world information there. All right. Now, click-through rates in practice are very, very low. So just do a thought experiment in your own head. Think of all the online ads you've seen in the last week, and then think of maybe how many of you clicked on. Chances are not many. So even if Google does a really good job of targeting the ads, probably not going to get much higher than 3%, right? Because even if in principle you might like to buy, I don't know, a souvenir basketball from March Madness, chances are you're not going to buy that at any given point in time, right? So well-targeted ads, you're doing really well if you can get like a 3% click-through rate on that. For most other online ads, typically the click-through rate is way less than 1%, right? Around the order of 1/10%. And that even includes the fact that about half of online ad clicks are accidental. People don't mean to click on the ad, but they were like hovering the cursor over it and whoops, finger slipped and they clicked on the ad. So, this is about what you're going to do. But just to give a quick demo, think about that difference. 3% is 30 times bigger than 1/10%. So banner ads, being kind of garbagey, right, are making a lot less money than Google can. So Google, by putting in the work to show the right ads to the right people, is getting maybe 10 to 30 times as much revenue as these other operations would be from running banner ads without, really targeting the ads. So targeting the ads, finding out who's going to respond to it, super important. That's where the money comes from. All right. Now, clicks. First of all, Google wants everyone involved in the whole advertising process to be happy, right? Wants viewers to be happy, wants advertisers to be happy, and of course, Google wants Google to be happy. And how they get happy? Well, viewers are happy if they see ads run from legitimate sites for products they're actually potentially somewhat interested in, right? We all understand that advertising is kind of a hit or miss thing, but if once in a while you see something that's interesting, that's pretty good, okay? Advertisers are happy when their clicks are actually paying for traffic that's likely to come to their site and buy something. That's what advertisers want, right? They understand it's a numbers game. Not every visitor is going to buy something, but as long as overall they're making money through ads, they're happy. And Google, of course, Google's happy when it makes fat stacks of cash. And the way it makes fat stacks of cash is by showing the right ads at the right time to the right people. So they have whole big complicated systems for doing that. So those are good clicks, right? Good clicks are an actual human user seeing an ad that's of interest to it and going to the website, not necessarily with intention to buy, but at least intention to take a look into the product and see maybe they'd like to buy it, right? That's what a good click is. But of course, there are bad clicks, right? You can probably think of some vulnerabilities in Google's model. For example, imagine you're an unemployed blogger, right? You made a blog in a desperate but ultimately failed attempt to earn some money. And out of desperation, you try clicking on those AdSense ads on your own blog in order to get enough money to pay for pizza at the end of the month. Well, yeah, people could do that, and Google has to check for that. Also, competitors could get into an advertising war. Imagine if Walmart decides to sabotage Target by creating a bot program that looks at all different pages around the internet, and every time it sees an ad for a Target product, it generates a virtual click so that Target has to pay some money to Google, but doesn't actually, get any real site traffic from it, right? So that stuff. So Google tries to distinguish between legitimate and illegitimate clicks based on factors like how much traffic is getting generated. Imagine if you're an unemployed blogger sitting at home, you pop open your blog, you click on an ad, you go to another page on your blog, click on an ad, you go to another page, click on an ad. Google's going to see, wow, we're sure getting a lot of clicks from that particular IP address. We're just going to flush that out. We know something kind of scammy's happen. Also, time between clicks, right? Normal people might click on an ad or two in a week at most, right? Most people don't click on that many ads. So if you see that there's one machine that is clicking on many, many, many ads, Google's going to look at that and say, ooh, that looks kind of sketchy, fake. And behavior on site, right? Normal humans, they go to a page. They're not going to the page to look for ads, right? They're going to go to a page. If it's search results, they're going to scroll down for a while, maybe look at things. If it's a regular content page, they're going to take a little time to read the content that they came for. Sure, maybe they'll eventually click on an ad, but clicking on an ad probably isn't going to be the first thing they do when they go to a page. And they're certainly not going to go to a page, click on an ad, go to another page, click on an ad, go to another, click on an ad. So those kind of behavioral factors, Google's going to filter those out too as illegitimate clicks. And any clicks that Google says, nope, that's fake, they don't earn revenue. Okay, so a few more slides. We'll go through these quick. If you've ever been to Amazon and looked at a product and maybe added it to your cart but didn't buy it, what can sometimes happen is you go to another site and you start seeing ads for that same product there. And you're like, whoa, they're tracking me. Yes, they are. So Amazon has a standard advertising tool to deliver ads for its products. And it's standard in the sense that there's a set of inputs it expects to have, there's a set of outputs it's going to produce, right? So the inputs, user history for the website, what product you looked at or added to your cart while you were there. And that information is typically stored on a cookie, on a data file on your own machine. And the ad has the ability to access that. So the actions that the thing can do, number one, it can send a request to Amazon saying, hey, I want to look up the current image for this product, and Amazon will send it back. It also might have things that might have like some kind of limited video script where it picks a batch of like 5 or 6 items and kind of cycles through them in some kind of slow motion movie. And it also says, yeah, you know, if somebody clicks on this ad while this particular product is showing, it'll link you to the product page, right? You don't want to click on an ad for a product and go to Amazon's homepage and have to, you know, browse around to try to find the product you were looking at that you came to see in the first place. And again, the outputs, these ad objects, they can do things like track whether somebody responded or didn't respond. If they did respond, how long it took them to respond. And they can make updates to the cookie file, right? They can say, oh, somebody saw this ad, they saw the product, they clicked on it, they went to the site, they looked at something about this ad, about this product. So we're going to update the cookie so that we don't keep on showing them the same product if we have something better to show them. And the way this works, something called APIs, Ad Application Program or Application Program Interfaces. So we've talked a lot about interfaces between applications. So what happens is you'll have two applications that need to communicate, so they have to have their data exchanged in some kind of standard format. For example, Amazon has a standard set of things about a product. Your web browser has a standard format of how it's going to display that ad, right? The web page will tell your browser how it's supposed to be displayed. And so Amazon systems and your browser have to exchange information through some kind of API. So what it is, you first design generic objects that conform to those standards, right? So you have standard input, standard output, standard set of things you can do. And once you've built that in, the designers don't need to know any of the machine-specific attributes on either side, right? Your browser doesn't need to know the inner workings of Amazon systems as long as it gets the ad in that correct standard format. Likewise, Amazon doesn't need to know what hardware you're using, what operating system you're using, what web browser you're using. As long as your web browser can deliver that data to Amazon in the specified standard format, it's all good. Amazon doesn't care what your system configuration is. So ad APIs pull online ads from some database, right? Whether that's for Google, Amazon, whatever. And those ads will appear and act in a standard format, right? So for example, you might have a standard block for a label or some other descriptive text around the ad. You have some standardization around the size of the ad. If you're doing AdSense, the blog owner has to specify the size of the rectangle where the ad will appear, right? So that's going to be part of the thing that your browser sends to Google. Other things like image or video quality, if you're using an older machine, you might say, hey, send me a low resolution copy, right? If you're using some cutting edge machine, you might say, send me the best thing you got, we can handle it. And other things like the action on click, right? Obviously, any given ad, if you click on it, it's probably going to take you to that product page, so that needs to be specified in the ad object as well. All right, so Formatting essentials, right? We talked about this before when we were talking about Amazon and transactions and how you use objects to exchange between applications. This is the same kind of thing, except in this case, the object is the ad itself. So the way you describe an object is, number one, the data that it holds. So the image or the video sequence that the ad uses, where it links to, that sort of thing. That's all the data about the ad. And then the actions that it can perform, right? Does it have authority to read from the cookie? Does it have authority to write to the cookie? Does it, send Amazon some notification saying, yeah, a person responded to this ad? Does it send a notification to Google saying, here's the IP address of the thing, and here's what other information, right? How long had they been on this page before they bothered to click on the ad? Things like that Google uses to track good or bad clicks. And it'll have to have some kind of standard format for inputs and outputs, right? The API is going to expect the ad to arrive in a standard format, and any response it sends back, it's going to send back in a standard format. And those standards can be provided either through JSON, which we talked about in Amazon, object description language. JSON is compact and therefore very widely used. XML is still out there. It's workable. It can do this task, but it's also out of date because the code is bulky, takes up more space, and in general, it's not nearly as easy to implement on web pages, so not much used anymore. Last thing, very last thing, I'm only bringing this up because Stack Overflow is your friend, right? So this is an article, mostly historical information. Why is JSON replacing XML as a data format from like 14 years ago? But I want to show you something, because going forward, anything you're doing with tech, whether it's in some other class, something you want to figure out how to do in Excel, or if you're an IDS major, something about coding, anything you want to find is probably there on Stack Overflow. Now, if it's Excel, yeah, there's Microsoft Office documents and stuff too. But suppose we're looking for Excel, how to use, what's an obscure function? Let's do how to find text in a range of cells. Great. And you can do Stack Overflow, right? So my point is, oh shit, look, there's a whole bunch of this stuff, right? So Stack Overflow's got it's got some more stuff here. There's other things like super user. But what I'm saying, Stack Overflow is your friend. If there's something you don't know how to do in Excel or any other software later on, Stack Overflow's been around for a while. If you have a question, chances are somebody else has had the very same question, okay? So in case you didn't know, Stack Overflow is a thing. All right, have a good weekend.